favorite. It's called Unwrapping the Gifts, the 12 Days of Christmas. It's a series of 12 meditations by Curtis Almquist, who is a friend of mine and one of the monks who lives down on the Charles River in Cambridge. He has a meditation on a different spiritual gift for each day of Christmastide, so there are 12 of them. And here's the one titled The Gift of Joy for the fourth day of Christmas. It's about 10 minutes long, so make yourself comfortable, and I will not be following it with a sermon. Not long ago, I was flying home to Boston from the West Coast. The weather was stormy, the turbulence had been nauseating, flights had been delayed and canceled left and right. Late in the afternoon, the skies were definitely not friendly, nor were my fellow passengers. I had just gotten off one late plane, hustling in a kind of anxious daze to get to my next gate, where I both hoped and feared that my connection would also be late. Then the most amazing thing occurred. Here, in an airport lounge, are half a dozen couples, dressed up to the hilt, as handsome as models in Vanity Fair. They seem to be an official welcoming troupe engaged by the city or a convention. Actually, they are dancers, ballroom dancers. Amid the cacophony of airport announcements and all the bustling and bumping that goes on, these 6 or so couples are waltzing to the music of a string quartet. I stop dead in my tracks, as does most everyone else. People's luggage simply slides down their legs to the floor. They watch, mesmerized, beaming with delight. A man standing next to me, a high-powered executive type, has tears streaming down his cheeks. It is that beautiful. Such an absolutely arresting juxtaposition to the organized chaos in the airport that afternoon. It comes to an end, this waltz, only for one of the women dancers to walk through the empty space created by us travelers. This woman walks to the edge of the circle to a man, another traveler, a guy with a plane to catch. This woman dancer whispers something to the traveler. Very curious. What is this? He sets his briefcase on the floor and allows himself to be escorted into the center of the improvised dance circle. Again, the music begins, and within seconds, this man, a fellow stranger along the way, starts waltzing with this dancer before us all. It was a stunning moment, resplendent with energy and flow and delight. Our fellow traveler seized the opportunity, and it so smacked of life. It was pure joy. The spontaneous and thunderous applause we all gave completely drowned out the sorry weather that day. To have joy, or as we would say in slang, to do joy, is to rejoice. Rejoice means to have a deep sense of delight. The Greek word literally means for the heart in its deepest place of passion and feeling. To be very well. Joy is something of a rare commodity. The gift of joy does not get much press. Why is that so? And how can this spiritual gift be tapped and unwrapped? First, joy takes time. Joy is not fast food. It comes as a byproduct of living a savored life, of having time and taking time to smell the flowers. Joy needs time. There is an old monastic insight about living a joy-filled life. Take time, take at least some time each day to do one thing at a time. Take time, take at least some time each day if you are walking, just to walk. Take time, at least some time, if you are looking, just to look. If you are listening, just to listen. If you are sipping iced tea or watering the plants or petting a dog, take time to do just that. Do one thing at a time, and do it as often as you can. Take the time to let the fragrances and aromas of life penetrate to the deepest part of your being, where they can be savored. Don't just visit life. Life needs time in order to be lived abundantly. Second, joy requires acceptance. Joy requires our saying yes to life, to the life we've been given, the hand we've been dealt, the invitation to the dance. Joy requires a deep willingness to accept how little of our life is actually within our own control. It's an acknowledgement and an acceptance that God will be God. It is God's world on God's time. We are God's creatures, and God is at work according to God's good pleasure. Joy presumes living with intentionality, to accept the good gifts of life that actually are there, not to live life in a state of rejection or resentment about what is not there or what is no longer there. Life brings arrivals and changes and departures, and that's life, the changes and chances of life. To rejoice is to say yes to what is there. Without the recognition of what is now, our unmet desires will always be elusive. In God's good plan, there is a reason why today is not tomorrow. We need the provisions of today to prepare us to receive the promises of tomorrow. Joy requires a posture of acceptance, of saying yes to life, not the life we could have had or may feel we should have had, but of saying yes to God for the life that God has given us, which is the only place there is life for us. Third, joy requires desire. I was talking with someone not long ago on this topic of joy. There was absolutely no joy in her life, she was saying. I asked her whether she wanted to know joy. My question applies to you too. Do you want to be joyful? Joy is a gift. It's a spiritual gift. Generally speaking, if you want to receive a gift, you don't keep your hands in your pockets. Open your heart and open your hands to receive the gift of God. Last of all, joy requires endurance, particularly in the New Testament. A great deal of writing about joy is in the context of suffering. Why is it that we hear so much about the joy of the cross of Christ? Why is it that at the Annunciation, Mary first knows fear and then knows joy? And it's the same with Joseph. First fear, then joy. And it's the same with the shepherds. First fear and then joy. Much later, it's the same with the women at the tomb. Joy comes out of fear of all things. Joy is a paradox. Our English word paradox comes from the Greek paradoxa, para meaning other, doxa meaning glory, other glory. In other words, it's about God's glory being manifest in a way other than we would have imagined. There is a direct relationship between the depth of suffering and the height of joy. The extent to which we have known suffering is the extent to which we can know joy. It doesn't mean we should go looking for the suffering. There's surely enough to go around without having to look for it. Nor does it mean to deny suffering. In our suffering in life, when we face what we would not have chosen but cannot avoid, at these times our experience tells us that when we say yes to God, the door is opened for transformation and consecration. The psalmist writes, "Weeping may spend the night, but joy cometh in the morning." There is something about facing the dark night that allows us to see the dawn of joy. Back in my high school years, I set out to be a competitive swimmer. Several weeks into my first season, I was a broken man. Every muscle in my body hurt. My neck hurt, my shoulders hurt, my arms hurt, my back hurt, my thighs hurt, my calves hurt. I was at my end, and I was sure I would fail and never make the cut for the team. In my youthful desolation, I poured out my heart to one of the wise old men on the swim team. I think he was 18 years old. I told him of the absolute despair of my heart and the pain in my body. I remember he listened patiently, and then he said, "Do your feet hurt?" "What?" I asked. He said again, "Do your feet hurt?" Well, I said, "No, at least my feet don't hurt." And he said, "They will." He continued, "You're getting in shape, and this is what it takes." I was in ecstasy. Everything still hurt in my body, but my heart soared to the heavens because I was right where I belonged. My suffering was not for naught. This slight momentary affliction was preparing me for something more, something wonderful, and suddenly I was full of ecstatic joy. Joy is a mystery. It's as mysterious as our suffering, and it's as boundless as our suffering. Somehow, in God's economy, the one creates the space for the other. Go ahead, do joy. Try it, you'll like it. Joy will not spare you suffering, nor did it spare Jesus. We are not spared the cross. We've shared the cross, but also the joy that follows. Joy will give you a place in your heart to be well, to be passionately alive, even amid the changes and chances and sufferings of your life. If you know something already about suffering, you're at least halfway there. You are set up to unwrap the gift of joy in this season of your life. Truly.